you sure this be...
Let me, what we do first, I know you're anxious here.
Oh, well, I'll be fine.
Let me talk a little bit here, and then we'll get to a little bit of exploring, because a lot of people out there don't really realize what's happened here. Let me, hold on one second. I apologize.
That'd be fine. That'd be fine.
We have a very special guest today. I mean, the excitement is just boiling over. Anyway, my name is Jack Celli, and I'm sitting here with Mr. John Chapman, and you might know him by another name. We'll get into that later, but he's taken a trip on a time machine of some sort and found himself here at LATV Studios. And I mean, we're talking a couple of 100 years out of your time frame. And I mean, he's looking around here. We don't basically have to tie him down because everything in here is new to him. It's just incredible. I know you're going to have a million questions. I get a million questions, and I can see you're a little bit nervous with everything that's going on here. You want to start off a few questions that you might have, so we can put you a little bit at ease?
Well, the apples look familiar. I'll tell you that much. The apples look familiar. The pumpkin look familiar, but everything else, my goodness, you have walls with innards on them, I suppose.
Innards?
Innards.
You mean innards like in an animal, like when you
sort of. I mean, if we be in the belly of the beast, here would be the wall of the belly of the beast, I suppose. And this contraption here, this be fascinating. You say there'd be 20,000 folk in there.
Yeah, well, actually, they're not in there. What this is, it's a conglomeration of glass and materials that you probably never even heard of. Plastics, wires which carry, how can I explain this?
I know wire beam.
You know what wire mean?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. But if you had a wool rug with your bare feet on a very dry day and you walked across and then you touched something metal, there'd be a little lightning from the sky during a thunderstorm. Yes,
I heard about Ben Franklin. He did some...
With a kite,
With a kite, yes, you know him.
Yeah. Well, we heard about him. He's actually on... His picture's actually on some of our money nowadays. I mean, it's amazing what's happened since you've been gone. But this electricity, lightning, Ben Franklin with the kite, emanates through the innards of this machine. And feel free, take a look. I'll see if I can come up with you. Be careful, because you are attached to a wire. And
what do I don't see nobody in there.
Well, later on we can show you the back room, and we can see how you're a picture, like an artist with an easel and charcoal would draw your picture. Basically, this machine, through the electricity and its innards, takes your picture, sends it through a wire, and then there's wires that go out all over the city of Leominster to all the houses, okay? All the houses. I mean, I know when you were here, there were very few. And each house has a wire attached to it where the electricity goes through it. And see this little box over here, this other contraption?
Yeah.
The wire ends there, and your picture shows up in their house. It's incredible.
So they would be seeing what I'm seeing now.
Right. Exactly.
Look at this. I put my hand out and I can see it moving.
It's pretty cool.
This is cool. It's
cool. It's fascinating.
Hot. This is really interesting. I would be excited about this. All right. Yes.
I know this is going to be a lot of fun. All right. But when you were growing up, I know probably as much about your time frame as you know about this. If I came into, like, say, for instance, one of your schools. Okay.
One of my schools, yes.
When you were growing up, when you went to school, it was very simple. Could you tell me a little bit about your schooling in the early days?
When I were in Longmeadow, that's where I went to school. It were, as you say, a simple affair, and there would be one school master for 20, I suppose, children, and we would teach. He would teach from grade 1 to grade 6, and then beyond that, of course, you'd have to leave in order to take care of the farm and take care of the planting and take care of the feeding and mowing and everything that you'd have to do to help out upon the farm. And so it were a simple affair, but we learned a lot with our slate and the charcoal. And I showed the charcoal and the slate to school children in Leominster.
So when,
and
excuse me, when you say charcoal and slate, I don't understand that.
well, a slate be a rock.
Right.
That cleave off
Okay.
in thin sheets, and we get ourselves a hunk of this slate and a piece of charcoal. We bring a piece of charcoal from the fire to home, and when the schoolmaster say something important, well, we write that down on the slate, and that be the way that we're able to memorize certain ciphers, certain processes, and so forth. Yes.
So nowadays, we're going to have to show you this later on. In another room, we have what they call computers. And the schoolmaster or the teacher will, talk to the children today, and they press letters on the computer. It's called a keyboard. I'll have to show you. It's very tough for him. I know I'm having a hard time picturing
Keyboard.
slate. A keyboard. And what it will do is, through electricity, through wires, send the letters.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
A keyboard. Was this a board made up of little turnkeys that you unlock
Let me see if I
locks
can.
with?
Let me see if I can give you a.
Let me just try to get the whole thing.
This is fun. I mean, this is great.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to. I don't mean to be rude.
It's
I'm
fine.
just trying to.
Let's picture a piano.
A piano.
Okay.
Piano.
On the piano, you have keys. And let's just say that on the piano, the keyboard is the white and the black keys. Okay. Instead of a white and a black key, you'll have an A, a B, a C, and instead of pressing a note and hearing a sound, you press the A and you actually see the letter appear.
Why wouldn't you just
magic.
write A?
I never thought of that. And the kids today probably don't think of it either. It's a little bit different out there now.
I suppose so.
I think they're spoiled.
suppose so.
Most of the kids are
You
spoiled.
think they're
today.
spoiled?
Yeah. I mean, the chores, like you said before, you had to go to school in the morning. There's no chores. There's no chores. They got.
And I learned early on in my visits to your school children that they no longer bring wood for the fire in the winter.
Yeah.
And so that were a common practice.
We rely heavily on foreign oil right now.
On foreign oil.
Foreign oil.
Them furnace.
Right. They taught you all about the furnaces? Beautiful.
Yes,
Well,
they
anyway, wood and then coal. I think you probably relied on wood more than, as the years went on, they started burning more coal. And then oil came into prominence. And they drill holes deep, deep into the earth. And they call it black gold, a black liquid. And they send it through a furnace, which throws out an incredible flame to heat water, which circulates through the house or the school and warms the school. I prefer the wood myself.
Wow.
I have a wood stove, and
Nobody ever explained that to me.
Really?
That's very clear. I understand it.
Yeah.
So you have this fire, and the fire would be made from this oil.
Right.
And the fire burn.
Right.
And it heat water.
Right.
Must be a big kettle.
It's a big kettle.
Big kettle.
Big kettle.
And then this water moved through a pipe.
A pipe. But the pipes are not made of wood anymore. They're made out of copper. No lead.
Copper?
Yes, they don't use lead anymore because they found out since you've been gone that lead actually contains a poison. It's a metal. It's heavy, and if it's used in houses or into water pipes, it can get into your body, and it can actually impair your thought process. It can kind of make you dumb. So they don't use lead anymore. Think about it.
I'm thinking about it. Maybe I've been having some lead of late.
Have you heard of the expression leadhead? Well, that's where it came from. There's a lot to learn.
Well, there certainly be. I find myself constantly amazed at what happens with you moderns. I look around and I have these discussions with children all the time about this thing that you just mentioned, electricity, and in this.
Camera.
What did you call it?
We call it a camera. Yeah.
In this camera that you have, and we talk about the transportation. Your conveyances, I'm amazed that they're able to fit 40, 50, 150 horses underneath the hood of this conveyance that looked like a stagecoach. There'd be no horses outside. They'd all be fitting right underneath this hood. And I asked a child once, so what do they feed these horses? And he looked at me just as clear as could be, and he said gas.
Now, do you know what gasoline comes from?
Well, I know what gas be.
Well, there's two kinds of gas.
Oh, really?
Well, if you eat too many apples, there's one kind of gas, which we won't get into now.
Oh, that wouldn't be the kind of gas you'd be talking about.
No. The kind of gas that we're talking
Swamp
about.
gas.
Similar. It's similar, but again, it comes from oil. The oil,
Oil?
is deep in the earth.
This oil be wondrous.
It's wondrous, but it's caused a lot of problems nowadays.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. The supply is dwindling. People rely on it too heavily. And there's huge, huge corporations in the world now that sell the oil to common folk, like you and I, at an incredible price. And we rely on it so much to cook our food, to power the horses in our, I'll call it a vehicle, and to heat our houses, that most of these corporations and laws were made, through the legislation to keep these companies from polluting the rivers. And it's a great thing because the river's actually got fish in it again, and people canoe on it, and it's a beautiful, beautiful river, as you know.
As I know,
As
yes,
you know.
Yes.
Okay, so you started out in Leominster.
So I started in Leominster, and at 2-year-old, the revolution happened, and shortly after the revolution, shortly after my daddy left, my mommy died.
Oh, God.
So I spent first 6 years, most of my first 6 years with my grandparents, actually. And then my daddy, he remarried. He left the service, and he remarried, and he married Lucy Cooley.
Lucy Cooley?
Lucy Cooley
now,
in Longmeadow.
In Longmeadow?
In Longmeadow. And he sent for us. It were Elizabeth and I. And poor Nathaniel. Shortly before she died, my mom, she gave birth to Nathaniel, and Nathaniel, he died too, just as an infant. Anyway, pretty soon, Lucy Cooley and my father.
I know you don't want to dwell on that, but it was common back then.
Yes, they were.
Even when I talked to my father, who's 86 now, when he was young, it was very common for infant mortality to not make it. That's one of the
it's
good
still
things.
it still saddens me
And it hurts,
that would happen. But Lucy Cooley and my daddy, they started repopulating right quick.
Good for them.
And I have about 9 half-brothers and sisters.
Wow.
And we settled in Longmeadow in a rather small house. And there were 9 of them, and Elizabeth and myself, and Lucy, Mama Lucy, and Daddy Nathaniel. And we were all in this small house in Longmeadow. And so oftentimes we would just be crowded, and I'd find myself waking up in the middle of the night with arms in my face and feet in my face and my feet upon someone else's face. So I commenced to sleeping out under the stars and out under the trees. And I did that quite often in all seasons. And I think that probably is what toughened me up, if you will, for the wilds of the Ohio area.
Now, can I interrupt you?
Absolutely.
Sleeping out under the stars, did it also help you to develop the appreciation that you have for nature? I mean, did that help at all, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. More would be where we were. We were the river come by, close by. There were a strong trading route that come through Longmeadow in that area. And there were the beginnings of a trail, or a feed into a main trail that went west. And out of all of that, I developed probably the wanderlust, if you will, but spent much time being able to fend for myself, and to be able to do with what needed to be done with. I learned me a lot about roots and berries and nuts in season, and things that would serve me in good stead as I went out west. So when I were about 18 or 19, I decided it were time to just leave, make my way in the world. And so I headed out west. I went through New York, over the Allegheny Mountains and picked up the Allegheny River and then followed it down over the course of a few years down to Ohio River and up the Muskingum and Walhondig and the Mohican and then the Black Fork, and here I am now on the west branch of the Black Fork in Mansfield, Ohio. My half-sister Persis, she lived about 7 miles south, and the rest of my family, they seem to move to maybe 100 miles south of Marietta. So that's where they be, and that's where I be right now. I'd be thinking about moving on because civilization seems to be catching up. So I'm thinking about moving on maybe toward Indiana. As a matter of fact, I've started some nurseries on the way to Indiana, the Maumee River, if you know the Maumee River out there. I'll be planting some trees out in that direction.
Now, what was your motivation for planting all these orchards? Did you have any purpose for doing that?
I'd like to make a living.
Okay. We all do. I mean.
I'd like to make me a living, yes. But I see it as I went into Pennsylvania, I did see a wave of settlers coming in behind me, and I sensed that maybe in a year or two they would be there and they would be wanting to settle down. And one of the big things about being on the frontier is that a sense of home is what you want, and nothing brings a sense of home to you as much as an apple tree. And if you have an apple tree or 100 apple trees, you know, you have the apples and they serve all purposes. I mean, you know yourself. You can eat an apple for, it might be an interesting question, an interesting quiz of how many ways can you use an apple? But you can eat them right off the tree, and you can use them for cider, of course. And then when the cider get a little pickled, you find yourself in a wonderful, let's say, community kind of spirit. And then you let it sour, and it'd be vinegar for pickling. And we also bury apples to have them come up in the next, maybe January, February, pick them out of the ground or out of the root cellar, and we eat them then. We dry swirls of apples to use them in sauces in the springs, all beyond apple pie and apple crisp, which I dearly love, and all the other apple butter, of course. And those be some of the, that's where I be.
So
that's where
an apple is it's an all-around fruit. I mean,
it'd be one of the standards. Yes.
It's a thing of beauty, and even like you went into the point where when it turns, like for instance, if you made apple cider and it turns into apple vinegar, you mix it with a little bit of honey, and it can act as a cure.
It'd be a cure.
It's a great tonic, I guess you'd call it. Have you ever
clean you out real well?
Oh yeah, apples, generally clean you out. When I eat an apple, I'll eat the whole thing. I eat the seeds and all.
Oh yeah.
I enjoy the seeds.
Well, you help plant some more.
Absolutely, just walking around like the birds of the sky.
Like the birds of the sky, indeed.
But green apples, I like green apples. I like the nice.
Not ripe yet.
Yeah, or they have a different type of apple called a Granny Smith apple, which actually ripens green, and
that would be a modern variety.
Right,
yes,
it's very tart, and I really like those. I like them a lot. There's a couple of neat little songs now. You were talking about how there's nothing like the feeling of an apple tree to give you a feeling of home. Have you ever heard of "Don't sit under the apple tree with anyone else but me"? Anyone else but me, anyone else but me. No, 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 don't sit under the apple tree with anyone else but me till I come marching home. Now, have you ever heard of that one?
I'm afraid not.
It's a beautiful song, and again, it makes you feel like home, apples.
But the school children in Leominster taught me a song just last week.
Really?
And I don't know if it would be worthwhile to share.
I'd love to hear
I hope I can remember it. It goes something like, "Here come Johnny Appleseed. Apple trees, apple seeds is all he needs. Planting orchards on his way out west. Wears a hat upon his head. 'Neath the trees he makes his bed. Folks say Johnny's apples are the best."
Very
Well, that's what I did too for those children.
This is kind of neat too, because most of us, in learning about you, we learned about it through books that were read about you, but also through again the magic of this machine, the camera which puts things on television. And it was a man by the name.
That's right, it's still there.
A man by the name of Walt Disney. Who actually made a film about you, and I think he might have been instrumental in bringing you into folklore proportions. But again, we don't want to dwell on that. Let's talk about again. I had read a couple things about you also, not folklore stories, but that you had a great respect in the good book.
Oh, yes.
Yes. We want to talk a little bit about that.
Well, I be a follower of the writings of Emanuel Swedenborg. They would call me a Swedenborgian, if you will. And one of the things that is difficult to come by in Ohio in my time would be writings. Books be scarce. Books be right scarce. And when you're moving, when you're trying to make your way across the country, you have to make choices about what to leave behind and what to take. And oftentimes, the only book that comes would be the Bible. Well, the writings of Emanuel Swedenborg are very, very dense, meaning that there be a lot of knowledge in a few pages, and they can be separated from each other. So as I travel about, I might come up to a cabin, and my standard greeting would be, here would be John Chapman, and I bring you good news straight from heaven. And so I bring them, and we discuss. We discuss the Bible, we discuss the writings of Swedenborg, and very often I will rip apart a book of Swedenborgian writings and leave it with them. And then I'd go on to the next, and the next cabin, we'd do the same thing, and the next cabin, and the next cabin, and then maybe 3, 4, 5 months later, or 6 months later, or a year later, I come back to the first one and I'd swap. I would take leave a leaf from another pamphlet or another book, and I'd pick up the first one and pass it along. And that's what I would do. That's what I still do as I travel about. And I'm beginning to bring some of that into Indiana as I move toward Indiana. But Swedenborg has an interesting, I don't know whether it would be interesting to you, but I find it fascinating. I was just going to ask you about that as we die, the difference between this level of existence and the next level of existence be but the taking off of our mortal shell. And so if I enjoy apples in this life, I will enjoy apples in the next life. And if I enjoy swimming in a clear stream, then I will enjoy swimming in a clear stream. I just won't have the accoutrements, if you will. Would that still be a word, accoutrements? I hear that from the French.
Is it from the French?
Yes, okay. That's what I learned.
Accoutrements meaning
your apparel. Right. Yes, and so in preparation, I tend toward rather simple dress. This be rather fancy dress, matter of fact.
Well, this is a fancy occasion. And what I did today, I was trying to make you feel at ease. I went towards tattered dress because I had heard that you didn't fancy yourself in clothing. It wasn't an important thing to you, and I didn't want to put you in an embarrassing situation by wearing what they call a three-piece suit.
I do appreciate that.
I wore it's a wool sweater. It's a little bit fancy.
It would be a sweater.
And
that'd be a nice design, actually.
Pants. They're made out of cotton, and they call them blue jeans. Denim. Denim. Did they have denim? No denim back then.
Canvas.
Close to canvas, a little bit
light
softer.
Canvas, perhaps.
A little bit softer. But I wore some that I thought would make you a little bit more at ease today.
I've seen boots sort of like that.
Yeah, these things
sort of like that.
I live by these.
You live by your boots.
Yeah. I realized that you traveled barefoot. Another interesting thing I read about you one time was that it was a cold November day, and you were walking, and your feet, they were blistered and half frozen. And a traveler came by and offered you a pair of shoes because they didn't fit him.
Oh, that's happened.
You graciously took the shoes even though you didn't want them, and you wore them. And a few months went by, and you met up with this generous traveler again, and he noticed that you weren't wearing his shoes, and he questioned you. And do you remember what you told him? You told him that?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I tell him this fella come along, and his whole family were moving west, and he needed them more than I did. But it actually, in my recollection, it were a few years ago.
Was it?
But in my recollection, I basically, we're not a matter of months. We're a matter of days.
Really?
That sort of thing. That sort of thing has happened more than once, actually. But there will always be folk that need them more than me.
Right.
And blisters heal.
Yes.
Blisters heal, and my feet be pretty tough.
I know when you're planting orchards, you did a lot of the land clearing by hand.
Oh yes.
Now, and again, not, wearing shoes, your feet, sometimes you'd get a cut, a pretty bad one too. And again, I read, and again, I want to set the record straight, because some of the stories we get are based on folklore, they're based on, 200th generation stories. Now we have penicillin, we have painkillers, we have all these types of medicines that can take away an infection that you might get from stepping on a thorn and having dirt going. How did you handle, like, when you got a decent cut on your foot? What would you do?
Well, I would pretty much wrap it in a leaf, some astringent leaf, liverwort perhaps.
Yep.
Maybe dog fennel, and I would try to draw out any of the badness, and then I would bind it up as tightly as I could and walk on.
Yeah.
You
And
can't stop for that.
Oh, no.
You can't stop for something like that.
and the fact that you did walk barefoot, your feet were a lot tougher
Oh yes.
than what
Oh
we-
yes.
what
That's
we have today.
I have to admit, there'll be times that I show off
Yeah,
a bit,
yeah.
and I have on occasion actually taken pins and put them into my feet just to show folk how tough my feet are.
Really?
Well, the callus. You still familiar
Yeah.
with the word callus?
Yes, absolutely. I used to have some when I worked hard for a living, but right now, being in a television studio, my hands have gotten a lot softer. I mean, look at you. You don't. I have girl hands, what you would consider to be girl hands, but then again,
The women
had
folk of
very
they have a fair amount of callus too. But I would stick the pin in, because the callus be so thick,
Yeah.
it would not penetrate to the quick, and folk would be astounded, and we'd all have a laugh about it. There would be a time or two when I actually would stand upon ice and melt the ice with my feet.
Wow.
Just for another thing, showing off.
Yeah.
Them days are gone, I think.
That's another thing that always interested me, and something that in terms of, like, nowadays, okay, in our houses, through this miracle of electricity, if we have a piece of game, we keep it in a box that the electricity cools off, and it keeps. You can. It's called a refrigerator. Now, just say, for instance, I know you ate a lot of vegetables. I don't even know. Did you eat meat at all from animals, or did you believe in that? I'm not sure if you did or not.
Well, I think when I were a young fellow,
Yeah.
then of course in the Nathaniel Chapman household, we would have meat and fowl and so forth. As much as possible, I do not eat the flesh of living beings anymore, because I think they be sacred.
Right.
And that would include bugs and things of that nature, mosquitoes. I would not eat a mosquito. I would not eat a rattlesnake. Although sometimes a rattlesnake, they do offend me, and there were more than one time I think, when I did find a rattlesnake, and the rattlesnake bit me, and my anger boiled up, and I stepped upon the rattlesnake, and I killed it. And then for about a month after, I would not. Now, from time to time, I do have shoes, and at that point, I did have shoes upon my feet, and so I would wear the shoe on the left hand, but I punished my right foot by not wearing a shoe upon that foot for about a month, because it killed God's creature, and that would not be a good thing to do. But for the most part, I would eat. I would right now. I eat mostly vegetables in season, and berries in season, and nuts, and then I have my stores. I've got a good supply of stores all ready for the winter. I'll have roots, and I have again more nuts, as many nuts as I can get. I do love those nuts in the winter. And so, and we'll cook the roots, and there'll be wild potatoes that we'll be eating, and so on and so forth. But could I speak a bit about the apples?
Yeah, could I just like go
yeah.
to the ice question that I had
Oh, you
first,
have
and
an ice.
then we'll get right to the apples. But families that do partake in wild game or fowl, how do they
Salt them down.
Salt them down. So they had no refrigeration, no electric boxes.
There'd be a root cellar.
Okay.
There'd be a root cellar where you keep some place where you dig a large hole in the ground, as large as you can accommodate, and you put roots in there. And you could, and do, put some meat. You could put meat
So
in
that
there.
would keep it cool enough
And
where it wouldn't spoil.
sometimes they'd be smoking it too.
Okay.
And both ways for a change of flavor.
Boy, things have changed.
Oh, indeed, indeed, indeed.
You want to talk a little bit about the
Well,
apples here?
if I look at this,
Yeah.
I don't know what this camera thing can do. Let me look
Yeah,
here.
if you want to go right up to the camera again, you can, show the folk back home.
If we bring this right here, if you
I'll
look
put a
at
little
this
bit of
apple,
light on it for you
now,
there.
now this apple looked like a fine apple, and this would be a right fine 18, 5, and 20 apple. But notice if you turn it around, it'd be somewhat less than perfect, and it'd be rather on the small side. The wonderful thing that you moderns have done is you have increased the size of the apple, and you've increased the size of the apple, you've increased the juiciness. These apples be right near perfect. Now this be a modern variety called a Macintosh,
Macintosh, very good apple.
and this would be a modern variety called a Cortland.
Looks almost like a basketball.
This be a fine big apple. And if we compare, look at this, if we compare this Cortland,
Oh my
if we
God.
compare this Cortland to this 18, 5, and 20 apple, 1825. I'm sorry, I keep.
That's okay.
You see the size be markedly different. Anyway, I just thought I'd bring that up. These apples come from Sholin Farms in Leominster.
Yes.
And one of my tasks here today, I think, would be to indicate that Sholin Farms be having their Scarecrow Festival this weekend.
Yes, yeah.
And I think I would like to just mention that on the
Say it
box,
right.
the
You can say it
camera.
right to the camera.
Says, mention this on the camera that Sholin Farms be having their Scarecrow Festival this Saturday and Sunday, and they be having a lot of things to do there. If I may,
Now, will you be there?
I will be there. I will definitely be there. I look here, I've got a little note here on this broadside. Children of all ages will make your scarecrow at our farm stand, provide the clothes and the stuffing. What a day for children. We, the Sholin folk, will supply the hay and the clothes. You provide the ideas. You can pick your own pumpkins and apples on Saturday. And of course, you can pick your own apples any time Wednesday through Sunday, up through end of October, I believe. You can pick your own pumpkins or just relax and enjoy the fall atmosphere. View and vote for your favorite scarecrows. And then, in conjunction with that, we have the Johnny Appleseed
Here we go.
5 and 10 kilometer walk routes, sponsored by Walk and Mass Folk Sport. They'd be the folks at the Walk and Mass Folk Sport Club, the Leominster Recreation Department, and the Friends of Sholin Farms invite you to participate in the Johnny Appleseed Walk in Leominster, Massachusetts, the birthplace of myself. Better known as myself. The walk is held in conjunction with Sholin Farms' 3rd annual Scarecrow Festival.
It has to be a little bit flattering.
It's
I mean, we're even
really-
looking at a magazine printed again in with color inks, and it's a guide to Johnny Appleseed Trail. I mean, there's even a trail named after him. God bless you.
Excuse me.
God bless
Excuse
you.
me. Excuse me.
But it's
The whole trail.
Yeah, a whole trail, and it's really neat. I mean, the way I talk, it's probably as foreign to you the way I talk as it is to me the way you talk. I mean, the words we use to express the same feelings, the feelings are universal, have changed.
Well, that'd be true.
But we do still have a lot in common. I mean,
I have here tell of some of your expressions.
yes,
And they
yeah.
they'd be interesting, to
I got
say
one
the
for
least.
you. Ready?
What would that be?
I hope you can use this one. You could groovy.
Groovy?
It's groovy. It
I don't know
means
if I mean groove. That'd be like
groovy.
A hoe in the
right.
field.
And if we could go into like an analogy, you know, you hoe the field, you have a groove, which
groove.
makes the plot plantable. So it's like a
Right.
very good thing.
That would be a good thing.
When you say groovy,
Groovy
it's
would be a
very
good
good
thing.
thing.
Ah.
So there's something you can use in your future travels throughout, you know, the area when you talk to the kids, when you educate them. Voila.
Well, there'd be one more thing that I would mention
ahead,
here.
go ahead.
The Halloween costume parade. It would be on Sunday, October 4th, 24. 24. I said that right,
24.
didn't I?
How would you say 20 and 4 or 4 and 20?
Score and 20. Score and 4, I mean, or
Okay.
or 4 and 20. Yeah. Once again, join us for a Halloween festival with tricks and treats and a parade and more. Dress in your favorite costume as we parade up to Sholin Farms. Where would that be?
Sholin Farm?
Sholin, no, I know where Sholin Farms
Okay.
be, but they'd be walking up to Sholin Farms from, I do believe it would be Fallbrook School.
Okay.
I do believe that would be. Be on the lookout. So that would be what's be happening. And then if I look at this be telling you some of the things that would be happening at the scarecrows. You have apple picking and pumpkin picking, build your own scarecrow, pumpkin carving, face painting, hay rides, petting zoo. Petting zoo?
Petting zoo. Yes. Well, you, in your day and age, animals were a very common thing. I mean, it was a very common thing for you to have, you know, a cow, some sheep, you know, chickens running around your yard. I mean, everyone did. It was part of how, you know, the eggs from the chickens. Today, people don't have that. I mean, they might have a cat that lives with them, or a little dog that is just to sit on their lap to pet. It doesn't hunt bird or rabbit. It's just to sit there.
Well,
so
yeah, we have
you have.
pets,
Do you
cats,
have
and
pets?
tamed wolves and so forth. Yes.
But because it's so rare now for people to actually have you know, farm animals around the house, when they have special occasions,
I have
like
noticed
this,
that. There'd be
they
very
bring
few.
animals in, and the kids get a chance to see.
They
what
look
the,
at-
yeah.
They be that scarce.
Oh boy, it's changed. You know, it's changed for the good. But in terms of like the simplicity and the enjoyment that you got when you were growing up in this town, where, you know, say for instance, you took off your shoes and you ran in a field and played catch with an apple. Today they sit in front of a computer, again with that keyboard, and they play
keyboard.
electronic games. And if their mind isn't occupied for more than a minute, they get bored.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that would keep the mind occupied for hours. You take your shoes off and you go down into the mud. And you just let the mud ooze up betwixt your toes.
Yeah.
And that would be right fine. Here would be something else. I want to say this.
Why don't we strike? If you come around again, perhaps we could get a mud festival together.
Wouldn't that be grand? Wouldn't that be grand? We could get people to pay money,
yeah.
pay absolute money just to come
put their
and
feet in mud.
Put their feet in mud. That might be fun.
Sounds like fun.
These folk at Sholin Farms be having a climbing wall. Now, I hear tell about that this would be a wall they set up so you can climb up.
Oh.
Now, that'd be something that we do. I mean, I know that you just go down the road and there'd be a wall that you can climb right up there for free. And
Well, see, the problem now, liability.
liability.
Liability. You have to have.
The ability to lie?
No, that is a very good point. Yes, the ability to lie, because most of this liability comes from a group of people called attorneys who, in my opinion, they have an ability to lie, but make the lie sound like true. But anyway, people own property, and if they have a wall that's climbable and someone happens to climb it and fall down, these lawyers or attorneys meet with the people, and they could basically take all your property away from you, and all your money. So they have special places where you can climb. It's just another modern thing. It's funny, but that's the way things have gotten.
I think I probably could tell you a story too about attorneys and lawyers, but they be holding a rather low place on the scheme of things in society.
Yeah.
Here, the last thing they're going to be having a hot air balloon. Now, as I understand it, this balloon take hot air and it capture the hot air that rises.
Right.
Hot air rises.
Right.
Kind of like our speech here. Hot air rises. And this rising hot air fill up a balloon.
Yeah.
And the balloon will actually rise off the ground, and there'll be enough hot air in there to carry folk up, right up off the ground in this hot air balloon. I find that amazing.
You know,
Next thing you know, folk will be flying about.
And you want to know something? We're going to have to wrap this up because we're running short on time here. And I don't know if this is going to shock you too much, but you probably know this, or you probably have heard it. We have actually sent men to the moon. And I'm serious. You don't believe me. He doesn't believe me. Yes, we have. We've put them on the end of.
I can believe a lot of things.
No. And I'm not even a lawyer.
And I believe that I believe when they tell me that this airplane bird that you have fly across the sky without flapping its wings but once.
It does.
Not even once.
Yes.
And it carry folk. It be so large that it carry folk.
Yeah.
I draw the line at opening a door and getting inside this bird. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
All right, but for you to say you're going to the moon, it would be beyond my comprehension.
Well, maybe sometime you could come in again in the future, and I could learn a little bit more about your time, which I would love. I know there's just so many things we haven't talked about, and and little by little, I'll teach you a little bit about our times, and maybe we can learn some of the simple things that you appreciated and bring them back into our lives today, which are very complicated and very complex, and sometimes makes people sad that they don't realize that they could find happiness like you did simply by communing with nature, walking about, and having a genuine mission and following it through. And I appreciate what you did for this country.
I think I have one thing to say about that. Bottled water. You folk, you've
heard about it, huh?
This would, you put water in a bottle and you actually get money for it.
Yeah, people buy it. Yeah. Amazing.
God bless the folk would do that. They'd be fine salesmen. They'd be fine salesmen would do that.
Snake oil. I mean, you heard of that,
Oh,
right?
indeed. It would be something like that.
But anyway, I'd like to thank you. The people at Leominster Access Television would like to thank you. And again, there's an open invitation if you could find your way through that portal of time travel to come back here. We'd love to have you. And I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chapman.
That'd be how you greet each other now.
Yes, we shake hands.
It would be fine. Yeah.
All right.
Good day to you, and it were a joy to be here. Right?
It was fun.
I hope we didn't bore anybody.
I don't think we did. Maybe a few lawyers are going to be poking fun at us, but we'll deal with that later.
Well, we poke enough fun at them.
That's right. Well, anyway, my name is Jack Celli for CityScope and Leominster Access Television, and for my special guest, Mr. Jonathan Chapman, otherwise known as Johnny Appleseed, I'd like to say thank you and goodbye.
Good day.